any democratic system by which the population elects individuals to represent them is a structure designed to be for the people and by the people. Citizens who want to become involved in democracy have many avenues by which to do so, such as running for political office, volunteering in campaigns, or just donating to their preferred candidates, to even just staying informed about how their government functions and who is elected to represent them. For those that choose not to plunge into the realm of politics, they still have the privilege to take part in the very embodiment of what a democracy is built upon: the act of voting. This is the height of power by which citizens are able to hold those they elect accountable, because the politicians in office are beholden to this electorate. Thus, if they wish to be re-elected in the future, they must strive to uphold the very principles that got them elected, fearing if they fail to do so, they will find themselves without the authority that was entrusted to them. There are plenty of honest legislators who take their oath of office seriously, advancing the ideas that got them elected while wishing to see the prosperity of those they represent. So while not every elected politician wants to hold on to their office for selfish reasons, there are still far too many that become complacent with their position, taking it and those that vote for them for granted. This can be especially true for elected offices that have no type of term limit, where politicians are able to be continually re-elected, thus holding the same office for years. This has become a large issue in the United States Congress, where certain politicians have held on to their seats for decades, seemingly doing nothing to help the areas they're supposed to represent, while appearing to greatly benefit from it. This has led many, President Trump included, to call for congressional term limits.
If I'm elected president, I will push for a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress,
in an attempt to curtail corruption from politicians getting wealthy and living off the taxpayer. While one can argue that citizens should be able to put their vote behind any candidate that wishes to seek office, regardless of how many times they have been elected, restrictions such as term limits are often undertaken to reduce corruption in government. Corruption that can lead to some areas where those in office have essentially turned most of their constituents into voting farms. That through decades of manipulation, poor education, or voters just becoming dependent on the government, these areas can be heavily propagandized to vote a certain way. As politicians who do this fear if they were to ever lose their grip on this voting base, they would never be able to regain jurisdiction should those that vote for them realize the truth, that your votes are the mechanism by which they receive power, that they hold these offices at your discretion, that they are the servants of the public, not its masters. Yet too many elected politicians and government bureaucrats do not recognize themselves as public servants. Rather, they view themselves as your betters who stand above the common man.
What difference at this point does it make?
They see themselves as the elites of society, coming from the best schools, with the best educations, with the best ideas on how not only to run the country, but your very lives.
That we Democrats know so much, that is true. And we have to kind of tell everybody how smart we are, and so we have a tendency to be very left-brain. And
due to this elitist mindset, so many of them have begun to actively show disdain for the voters when they choose not to cast their ballots for them, particularly if this leads to them losing their positions of influence.
I will consider it a personal insult, an insult to my legacy, if this community lets down its guard and fails to activate itself in this election.
From Hillary Clinton's now infamous basket of deplorables line.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
To Democrat presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, saying anyone who voted for Donald Trump is at best looking the other way on racism.
Anyone who supported this president is at best looking the other way on racism, at best.
Time and time again, those that have used the power of their vote in opposition of this elite establishment have been insulted and impugned, with accusations of racism, sexism, or bigotry, to even being called mindless robots who are not able to think for themselves. They do this because they fear your vote. It is the one instrument of democracy they can never have full control over, because it resides with the individual. They can try to influence groups with propaganda, attempt to sway communities with false data. They can spend all the money they want to flood your lives with political ads and campaign messages. Yet the individual who chooses to be involved as well as stay informed will never be deceived by such measures. Meaning, if one individual can think for themselves, so can others, leading to the possibility of them losing control over such communities. This is why they will use whatever means at their disposal to keep people blind and uninformed, while pushing for them to shun any who would vote contrary to the group.
Kanye West is what happens when Negroes don't read. And we have this now, and now Donald Trump is going to use it and pervert it, and he's going to have somebody who can stand with him and take pictures. I'm just looking at Scott's face. Scott's like, whoa, okay.
Their endeavor to control your votes has reached new heights with the election of Donald Trump. Wanted to persuade the U.S. populace that Trump had somehow stolen the election, that the Russians had interfered and tampered with votes, that Hillary Clinton had been cheated out of the election.
You can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
Anything to rob you of the power of your vote, to cast it as illegitimate despite none of their claims being true. Such as when Rosenstein said,
"There's no allegation in this indictment that any American citizen committed a crime. There's no allegation that the conspiracy changed the vote count or affected any election result."
To Obama saying,
"There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections, in part because they're so decentralized."
Even CNN said, no, the presidential election can't be hacked. Yet all of this was ignored in order to perpetuate a scam to convince America that your votes were wrong. With the advent of social media, their grievances have become far more amplified than in the past, creating animosity towards Trump voters unlike anything in modern politics. Not simply because of who Trump is, but because those who chose to support him were the ones who gave him the presidency through your votes. With the coming of another election, these same politicians and activists are terrified it will happen again.
It's my greatest concern, my single greatest concern. This president's going to try to steal this election.
As when Al Green said he is concerned Trump will get reelected if not removed from office.
I'm concerned that if we don't impeach this president, he will get reelected.
So they have ramped up their rhetoric to demonize anyone who would cast a vote for Trump, even seeking to delegitimize the election long before any votes are cast, such as Adam Schiff saying during Trump's impeachment trial.
And that is an attempt to use the powers of the presidency to cheat in an election for precisely this reason. The president's misconduct cannot be decided at the ballot box, for we cannot be assured that the vote will be fairly won.
Voting is the very voice of the people who participate in democracy. Those voices should be taken with the utmost importance, with every attempt made to ensure a fair and honest election. Yet certain groups appear to be making every effort to cast doubt on the elections of the United States, to place mistrust on those casting votes as well as those counting votes. From Trump and the Russians, to former Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams refusing to concede and insinuating that the election had been rigged against her.
It's more than just delegitimizing the results of an election. Donald Trump is trying to rig the future.
To even the most recent controversies with mail-in voting and the United States Postal Service. We're getting to the point where no one can truly trust the outcomes of the elections.
Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances.
With different groups having different reasons for their uncertainties. Regardless of those reasons, the effect is the same: the diminishing of your vote.
We cannot rely on an election to solve our problems.
No matter the efforts to undermine elections, and by extension your vote, you must never underestimate its importance. For your vote has the power to change the country, even the very world, despite what you may believe. The election of Trump is proof enough of this. From his new trade deals, new judges, and reduced regulations, to his fight against illegal immigration in sanctuary cities, to what he has been doing on the world stage, all of that from the power of your vote. The elites in government know this. So despite how much they would like to change it or control it, they're terrified of your vote, but need it nonetheless. You should never let them forget it. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. You can find more of my opinions over on my Minds page. You can also find me on Parler and Twitter. Links for everything will be in the description, of course. Thanks again, and God bless.